The sun rose over Babylon, casting golden light on the stone streets. Bruno the meerkat poked his head out of a little crack in the wall where he lived. He stretched, yawned, and looked around with curious eyes. The city was already busy. People bustled to and fro, carrying baskets and calling out greetings. Bruno loved mornings. They were perfect for exploring. Today felt different, though. A crowd was gathering near the king's palace, and Bruno's whiskers twitched with excitement. What was going on? He scampered closer to find out. Bruno darted through the crowd, slipping under robes and between sandals. He popped up behind a basket of figs, trying to listen. A royal messenger stood on a platform, reading a scroll in a booming voice. King Nebuchadnezzar has built a golden statue. When the music plays, everyone must bow down and worship it. Anyone who refuses will be thrown into a blazing furnace. Bruno's eyes widened. A golden statue? A furnace? He didn't understand it all, but it sounded serious. He decided to stay close and see what happened next. As the crowd began to move toward the Great Plain, Bruno tagged along. Soon, he saw the golden statue standing tall and shiny in the sunlight. It was huge, taller than any building Bruno had ever seen. Soldiers surrounded it, keeping watch. People were whispering and pointing. Bruno climbed onto a rock for a better view. Then, the sound of horns, flutes, and harps filled the air. All at once, people began to kneel and bow. But three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, remained standing. Bruno's heart pounded. The music stopped. Everyone stared at the three men. A few people gasped, some pointed, and murmurs filled the air. Bruno's ears perked up. Soldiers began pushing through the crowd, grabbing the three men by the arms. They didn't bow. Someone shouted, "They're disobeying the king." Bruno ducked into a crack in the wall as the soldiers dragged the men away. What would happen to them? Why didn't they bow like everyone else? Bruno had so many questions. He decided to follow. Bruno scurried along the palace walls, peeking through windows and cracks. Inside, King Nebuchadnezzar looked furious. His face was red, and he pointed angrily at the three men. "Is it true you won't bow to my statue?" he shouted. "If you refuse, I'll throw you into the blazing furnace. Then what god will be able to rescue you?" Bruno held his breath. The room was silent. Then Shadrach spoke calmly. "We serve the one true God. He can save us. But even if he doesn't, we still won't bow." Bruno shivered. The king's face turned even redder. "Make the furnace 7 times hotter," he roared. "Bind them and throw them in." Soldiers rushed to obey. Bruno followed them through twisting hallways and into the courtyard. The furnace blazed like a dragon's mouth. Bruno crouched behind a barrel, his little heart racing. He saw the soldiers tie up the three men and toss them into the flames. The heat was so strong, it burned the soldiers up instantly. Bruno's eyes filled with tears. How could this be happening? Just when Bruno thought all hope was lost, he blinked, then blinked again. Something impossible was happening. The three men were walking inside the furnace, completely unharmed. And they weren't alone. A fourth figure was with them, glowing with light and power. Bruno gasped. "Who is that?" he whispered. The flames danced all around, but the men were safe. The fourth figure looked like a heavenly being, and Bruno felt peace wash over him. God had shown up in the fire. King Nebuchadnezzar stood up from his throne in shock. "Didn't we throw 3 men into the fire?" he asked. "But I see 4 walking around unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." He ran to the furnace and called out, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, come out." Bruno held his breath. Slowly, the 3 men stepped out of the fire. Their clothes weren't burned. Their hair wasn't singed. They didn't even smell like smoke. Bruno could hardly believe his eyes. The crowd around the furnace murmured and gasped. Even the king seemed amazed. He looked at the 3 men and shook his head. "Your God has sent an angel to rescue you," he declared. Bruno's tail twitched. He had never seen such power before. Real power. Not the kind that scares people, but the kind that protects and saves. The king turned to the crowd and shouted, "No one may speak against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego." Bruno felt his heart swell with joy. Bruno watched as the king praised the 3 men. "You disobeyed my command and were willing to give up your lives rather than serve any god except your own," he said. Then he made a new law. No one is to speak against their God, for no other god can save like this. Bruno's whiskers twitched with amazement. He had never heard a king speak like that before. From his hiding spot, he squeaked softly, "God really is mighty." The king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to important jobs in Babylon. People whispered about what had happened for days. Bruno listened from rooftops and under carts. Everyone was talking about the men who walked through fire. The golden statue was still there, but Bruno noticed fewer people bowing to it. Something had changed. The story of faith and courage was spreading through the land like the wind. That night, Bruno returned to his quiet crack in the wall. He curled up and looked at the stars. God was in the fire with them, he thought, and he kept them safe. Bruno had always thought kings were the most powerful, but now he knew God was greater than any king. Bruno closed his eyes with a smile, feeling braver than ever before. He had seen something he would never forget. The next morning, Bruno scampered out again. But something in him was different. He no longer rushed from shadow to shadow in fear. He stood a little taller and explored with more joy. He knew that even small creatures like him mattered to God. Bruno had witnessed a miracle, and now he carried a big faith in his little heart. Back near the palace courtyard, Bruno spotted children playing and laughing. They didn't know what had happened the day before, but Bruno did. He stood on his hind legs, watching over them, just like the 4th figure had watched over the men in the fire. Bruno whispered, "Thank you, God, for being with us in the fire, and for being with us even now." Later that week, Bruno wandered near the statue again. He noticed it didn't shine as brightly as before. Maybe it was the clouds, or maybe it was something else. Bruno remembered the words of the men who refused to bow. "Even if he doesn't save us, we still won't bow." Their faith had left a mark, not just on the city, but on Bruno too. One afternoon, Bruno came across a frightened squirrel trembling under a fig tree. "What's wrong?" Bruno asked gently. The squirrel said a hawk had chased him, and he was afraid to leave the tree. Bruno smiled and said, "I once saw 3 men walk through fire and come out safe. God was with them, And he's with you too. The squirrel looked up, surprised. Really? Really? Bruno nodded. As the days passed, Bruno found more chances to share what he had seen. He didn't preach or shout. He simply told the truth. That he saw courage, faith, and the presence of God in a fire. And every time he shared it, the light inside his little heart grew brighter. Bruno often returned to the spot behind the barrel near the furnace. It had been cleaned now, the fire gone cold. But to Bruno, it was holy ground. He sat there sometimes, remembering the warmth, not just of fire, but of faith. He would sit still, close his eyes, and feel peace wrap around him like a blanket. One evening, as the sun set behind Babylon's walls, Bruno climbed onto a tall stone and looked out over the city. The streets shimmered in golden light, and the sky turned pink and orange. Bruno whispered a prayer of thanks. Thank you, God, for showing me your power. Thank you for showing me that faith can shine even in fire. A breeze blew across the rooftops as Bruno climbed down. The city was still full of noise and motion. But Bruno had found something still and strong inside himself. He knew that no matter what happened, God would be with him, just like he was with those 3 brave men. That night, under a canopy of stars, Bruno felt the warmth of the fire. Not the scary kind, but the kind that burns bright in your heart when you know the truth. He smiled as he curled into his little home. God is with us, he whispered, even in the fire. Bruno learned that faith in God can give us courage. Even when things seem scary or impossible, God is always with us. He never leaves us, not even in the fire. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we can trust him no matter what. Key verse: when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Isaiah chapter 43, 2. NIV. The stars sparkled overhead as Bruno whispered one last prayer before sleep. He thought of the flames, the 4th figure, and the miracle he had seen. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was real. Bruno understood that faith isn't about never being scared. It's about trusting God even when we are. With a yawn, Bruno curled up tight. He felt safe. Not because the world had changed, but because he now knew God was with him in every moment. Bruno learned that faith in God can give us courage. Even when things seem scary or impossible, God is always with us. He never leaves us, not even in the fire. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, we can trust him no matter what. Key verse: when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Isaiah chapter 43, 2. NIV.